Hello again, students. I wanted to give you an overview of assignment 4, which deals with using feedback. And this is my favorite assignment in terms of how much I wish my students, my English students, would use this type of strategy, and also just in terms of following where this came from. So a lot of these assignments came from the QEP, which I talked about in the beginning of the semester. And this particular assignment, I remember when the QEP was just first beginning, the designers were asking instructors, what do you wish students knew? What if there was one thing you could impart to them and get them to start doing, what do you think it would be? And my answer was using my feedback. As English instructors, we read hundreds and hundreds of essays a semester, and it's very time consuming. And it's not, like math, not to say that teaching math isn't hard work, but in math you get your answer and maybe there's a process that the instructor has to look at a little bit, but there's very little wiggle room. But in English, you kind of have to read between the lines and say, is the student making sense here? Is their thought process logical? Am I giving them enough of the benefit of the doubt? And so all of that time-consuming reading and reflection, and then we have to write back to you. We say things like, I couldn't follow your thought process here, or I'm not sure your thesis is consistent throughout your essay, or, a variety of other things. And then I feel like, and this is not all students, but many students are so concerned with the number, the grade at the end, that's the one and only thing they look at. Is they look to see, did I get that B or that A? And if not, maybe they just take a glance at the comments, but that's the most they do with them, is then that essay goes in their backpack, their folder, the garbage. And my words that I really pondered over and tried to say in a way that I thought was constructive or would be constructive for future writings don't go anywhere. And so when they came to us and we talked about using feedback, and a number of other instructors said the same thing, that was part of what we wanted students to take away. And so using feedback, I included a link here to a video that kind of defines it, because feedback can be a catch-all term sometimes to say like anything that gives you information about what you're doing. So, if you're a baseball player and somebody throws a ball to you, if you connect with the ball and you knock it out of the park, that's feedback. You're like, oh, I did it well. I'm going to try and replicate that again. Or if you hit a foul ball or you strike out, you might say, what did I do wrong? I'm going to try not to do that again. And so that might even be just if you don't have like a really direct coach or somebody there who's very knowledgeable, you might be trying to even figure that out on your own, but it's still very obvious sometimes, like, oh, I hit the ball, it went far, that equals I did a good job. I didn't hit the ball where I wanted, that equals I didn't do a good job. But some instances when you're learning skills, it can be more difficult to know, am I doing a good job? Am I doing what I need to be doing? Am I doing things effectively? If you're a musician, sometimes you know if you're on key or not. Sometimes you need someone to tell you. And I think in academic contexts, we often need that feedback, but students really are, when they stop and pay attention, I think they can offer themselves some valuable feedback. So those two things, the feedback students can offer themselves, and the what students can do with instructor feedback are the focus, are the foci, I guess in plural, of this assignment. And the related readings here are Communicating and Valuing Diversity, Chapter 10, and Chapter 8, Reading, Writing, and Presenting. And Chapter 8 has a more direct connection to this assignment, but also the idea of communicating with others, of learning what works and what doesn't, can be useful in terms of feedback. So Part 1 in here asks you to look at a textbook you have for this semester, and not just any textbook, but the most challenging textbook. So I've had students tell me that they just can't read their biology textbook. Like, either it's so boring they fall asleep, or they really try hard. They, get a cup of coffee, they sit down, they take the night off from work, but it's like another language, and they can't, stop and look every third word up. It's so just difficult for them that they give up and they just don't do the readings. So maybe it's your biology textbook that's giving you trouble. Some students have told me even their world religion class is giving them trouble. They don't understand the ethics chapters and things like that, or a philosophy class where it can get really abstract and they can reference terms, that to us seem very foreign. I mean, many of us live in a world of pop culture where we know, if we start talking about Mark Zuckerberg or the Kardashians or things like that, those terms might be foreign to somebody who's not really immersed in pop culture. Well, we're not immersed often in the discourse of a discipline, biology or religion or something like that, but we have to struggle with it. We have to persist and just persevere even if we're struggling. So it might take us a long time, and we may not be reading, with the level of comprehension and engagement that we would like, but your book has some tricks. I call them tricks. I guess they're just strategies for how to keep yourself engaged when you're not feeling it. How to get that information, how to assimilate it when you don't want to. And it's hard to make yourself do things you don't want to do, especially when you're an adult, right? And you're going, but I'm an adult. I don't have to do this. No one's going to take away my Nintendo if I don't read my chapter. But it's because you want that deeper understanding and you want to make those connections and you want the, course credit or the understanding that comes with it, that you persevere. So when you look at that challenging textbook, you want to select a reading, okay, and rate your comprehension of that reading. So maybe it was your last reading in biology or the last chapter, whatever kind of selection or section your instructor gives you, on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 would be like, I understood what I read, it's going to stay with me, I get it, it's applicable to my life, yeah, that kind of thing. And then, 1 being, it's like a foreign language. I was reading English, but it really didn't sink in. It didn't make sense to me. And then over the next week, apply new reading strategies when you read this textbook. So looking at the reading strategies from chapter 8 in there, where it talks about bring your reading to class, make friends with your dictionary, read to learn with the SQ6R method, make detailed notes, dissect the text, those kind of things. Those are your strategies that we're talking about here. We want to apply, I would say, pick 1 or 2. I wouldn't try to, your book has, how many? I'm looking at the chapter here, 9, 10, 11, 12. It has 12 different strategies, so I wouldn't say try to apply all of them. That would be exhausting and you probably wouldn't do any of them well or know what worked and what didn't. So maybe try 1, try 2 at the most. And then after the week has passed, assess your level of understanding when it comes to this issue, so this discipline, again using that scale from 1 to 10. So did your reading improve, your understanding of it? Or did they remain the same? And then what is your next step? Meaning, is this going to change anything for you? Maybe it's not. Maybe you use the SQ6R method and you're like, it's great, but I work 40 hours a week and I have 5 classes. There's no way I would have the time to do this for all the reading I have to do in biology weekly. It just isn't going to work. Or maybe you're going to say, this was amazing, I'm going to make time to use this strategy, even if it means I have to scale back on some other things. So what is your next step is kind of an open-ended question that relates to the strategies. And then part 2 is the same idea, but it deals with looking at a graded assignment you've received, whether it's a test or just some other kind of assignment, could be a quiz, I'd like it to have some instructor feedback. So yes, them marking X or a check mark or something is instructor feedback, but I'm hoping you'd get something a little bit more substantial, where you get a little bit more writing back or a little bit more something that indicates what went wrong besides an X. You know, that if you don't have anything that's like that, then I understand you can't use it, but ideally that would be what you would use. And then rate your comprehension of your instructor's feedback on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a deep understanding. So if your instructor, I'm using English examples because that's my field, but if your instructor passes back an essay and says to you, you know, you've got a problem with misplaced modifiers, and you're like, I don't know what a misplaced modifier is, Miss Reeds, but this is not helpful. Well, you probably don't understand the feedback well. But what are some strategies that you could use? So going and clarifying that feedback, it is your job, and students often don't think this is true, or maybe they just don't investigate it, but the students I've talked to are like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do? Wow, well, that sometimes seems like a lot of work, or that seems like, you know, something where I just didn't know that was what instructors wanted me to do. So for instance, if you got, you know, you have a problem with dangling modifiers from me, I would hope that you would either, what I would probably do, because I tend to be a bit shyer and more introverted, is I would probably Google what is a dangling modifier and try and figure it out on myself through YouTube and links. And then if I still didn't understand it, I would probably ask a really smart classmate. And then if I still didn't understand it, I might go to the instructor. But I encourage you to skip all those introverted, shy person things and even go to your instructor or go to the learning center. I mean, they have tutors in all disciplines there for you. So you could ask them, hey, my instructor said this is wrong, or I got a D on this paper and I have no idea why. Can you help me figure it out? Because that's really the goal there, is to try to figure out what went wrong and how to fix it. So you've got 2 assessments there, and you want to submit your paper in MLA format, so where you're reflecting on these. And then there is the rubric there where there's the content we're looking at, and then also looking at the writing. I'm not looking at, you know, is your writing perfect, but we're trying to avoid major grammar errors and mechanics errors. We're trying to write at a college level. So I'm going to stop there, and please let me know if you have any questions or concerns, and I'd be happy to address them.